A mother and son appear in court to be formally charged with the murder of London Thomas.
That's right. Jalen and Charla Pendergrass each face a charge of second-degree murder and evidence tampering in the death of the teen who went missing back in April.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.
April 5, 2023. Inkster, Michigan. 4 a.m. A young woman, London Thomas, steps out of a car and walks up to a house. It's the last time anyone will see her alive. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, where nothing ever seems to go wrong, the unthinkable happens. A mother, a son, and a deadly secret that will shatter everything they thought they knew about family. What happened that night behind closed doors? This isn't just a story of a life lost. It's the story of betrayal so deep, it redefines the very meaning of trust. A mother and son. A bond once thought to be unbreakable. But what happens when love crosses a line, and the people you trust most, are the ones who destroy you? For London's family, the pain is unimaginable. But for Charla and Jalen Pendergrass, the web they've woven will be their undoing. What could drive a mother to kill her own child? What could make a son, torn between loyalty and fear, stand by as everything unravels? The answers are buried in a tangled web of lies, deception, and a crime that no one saw coming. The truth? It's far worse than anyone imagined. In a small Michigan town, behind closed doors, a deadly crime was taking place. A mother, a son, a girlfriend, and a web of lies that would unravel with unimaginable consequences. What truly happened to London Thomas? Was it love? Betrayal? Or something far darker? It began like any other day in early April, 2023. London Thomas, just 17 years old, was full of life, dreams, and a future ahead of her, until, on the night of April 5th, her world collided with a darkness she couldn't see coming. That night, London was dropped off at Jalen Pendergrass' house, a place that should have felt safe to her. After all, Jalen wasn't just her boyfriend, he was family. Or so she thought. At 4 a.m., London was last seen being dropped off at Jalen Pendergrass' home, not knowing that, just hours later, her life would come to a devastating end. As the sun rises over the quiet streets, London's disappearance begins to cast a shadow over the town. Her family grows concerned when days pass, and there's no word from her. At first, they try to chalk it up to a typical teenage rebellion, thinking she might be staying with friends or too caught up in whatever she was doing. But as hours bleed into days, the worry turns into something far deeper. The calls to her phone go unanswered. The messages, ignored. Something is wrong. Something is very wrong. The morning after, her family grew frantic. No one could reach London. Her phone went silent. Her friends hadn't heard from her. The concern grew into panic. A sense of unease begins to permeate the air. London's family knows something is off, but they can't quite put their finger on it. And as the days drag on, the investigation slowly starts to pick up steam. Law enforcement enters the picture, trying to piece together a timeline, but all they have are questions. Where is London? Why hasn't anyone heard from her? Why did she vanish without a trace? What they don't know, though, is that those closest to London, her boyfriend, Jalen, and his mother, Charla, are hiding something. A secret so dark that it's slowly starting to smother the truth. The questions about where London is suddenly morph into something more ominous. Something far more sinister. While investigators scrambled to piece together the last known moments of London Thomas, those closest to her were already covering their tracks. But what they didn't know was that, in their attempts to bury the truth, they would only expose themselves to the authorities. The breaking point comes nearly a month later, when a crucial piece of information emerges. A friend of Charla Pendergrass, one who was unaware of the deeper story, comes forward. He reveals a chilling detail. Charla had asked for his help in moving a large, sealed plastic bin on April 6. She mentioned that the contents were unknown. This seemingly innocuous request would lead to the discovery of something far more sinister. The friend, feeling uneasy but reluctant to ask too many questions, helped Charla move the bin to a different location. And for weeks, no one knew that inside that bin was the lifeless body of London Thomas. On April 6, Charla Pendergrass asked a friend for help moving a sealed plastic bin. It was an odd request, but one that seemed harmless at the time. What Charla didn't know was that this small decision would unravel everything. Days later, the authorities received the tip they'd been waiting for. The SUV where Charla's friend helped her store the bin is traced to a house on Millard Street, in a neighborhood miles away from the Pendergrass home. It's here that the bin is finally opened, and London's body is discovered. The medical examiner confirms what everyone feared: London's cause of death was asphyxiation. She had been murdered. On April 26, the mystery was finally solved. The plastic bin, once moved in secrecy, now revealed its terrible contents. London's body was discovered, and the cause of death was clear: homicide. But the deeper question remained: who would do such a thing? And why? The investigation now takes a more intense turn, as detectives begin to piece together the timeline of events. With each revelation, the Pendergrass family's involvement becomes clearer. Charla Pendergrass and her son Jalen are arrested. Charla, with her calm demeanor and calculated lies, is painted as the mastermind. Her son Jalen, wrapped up in a series of legal troubles, is caught up in his mother's web. What led them to this moment? How did a mother and son get to a point where they would betray someone they claimed to love? And more importantly, how did they believe they could get away with it? The Pendergrass family, once thought to be just another face in the neighborhood, is now at the center of a chilling crime. A mother, her son, and a web of lies that would lead to a young woman's death. Now, as the trial looms on the horizon, the questions only grow. What drove Charla and Jalen to murder? What dark secrets lie beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary family? And, most haunting of all, could this crime have been prevented? Charla Pendergrass, 49, a mother caught in the eye of a storm that will change everything. A woman who once seemed to have it all: a house, a family, a life that appeared normal. But who was she really? What dark secrets did she hide behind her warm smile? Charla's childhood was one of abandonment, emotional neglect, and quiet desperation. Growing up in a fractured family, she learned early that trust was a luxury, and survival depended on getting what she wanted, by any means necessary. She was good at pretending. She could be the loving partner, the doting mother, the perfect neighbor, but underneath it all, Charla was playing a dangerous game. A game that would eventually involve her own son. Charla's relationships were always tinted with a sense of manipulation. Those who crossed her path would later realize the consequences of trusting her. One by one, people who got too close found themselves drawn into a web of lies. A former friend recalls an incident from years ago where Charla promised to help her with a personal crisis, only to abandon her at the last minute, leaving her to fend for herself. Charla's pattern of deceit, whether in romantic relationships or friendships, became more pronounced as she grew older. It wasn't just about lying, it was about controlling the narrative, shaping the world around her to fit her desires. And when she met Jalen's father, she quickly used the same tactics to secure her place in his life. Her son, Jalen, 23, deeply involved, yet hiding behind his mother's influence. Raised in a fractured family dynamic, Jalen became the type of man he is today: unpredictable, troubled, yet still clinging to a relationship he couldn't fully trust. Jalen's childhood was one of emotional confusion. His mother, ever present, but never quite accessible, left him to navigate a world of contradictions. Charla's love was a weapon, and Jalen learned early how to survive in that world. His adolescence was marked by troubled behavior. School was never easy for Jalen. He struggled with authority and often found himself in conflict with peers. In many ways, Jalen was a product of his environment: angry, confused, and seeking validation wherever he could find it. He began to fall into the same patterns of manipulation that his mother had perfected. He wasn't a child anymore, but he wasn't truly an adult either. His decisions became reckless, his relationships short-lived, and his need for attention and approval grew stronger. He had a soft spot for London Thomas, a girl he met through mutual friends. At first, it seemed like a genuine connection, a bond that he desperately needed. But deep down, Jalen knew he couldn't escape the gravitational pull of his mother. Charla's influence loomed large, even in his relationship with London. Jalen couldn't shake the feeling that he was stuck between two worlds, the world of his mother's control, and the world of his own desires. His love for London was real, but so was his fear of his mother's wrath. And in the end, it was the loyalty to his mother that would betray him. And then there was London Thomas, a 17-year-old with a promising future, whose only crime was trusting the wrong people. What was the spark that ignited her tragic end? London was everything Jalen was not. She was vibrant, full of hope, and dreamed of a future outside of Inkster. She had big plans, and the world seemed to be at her feet. Her friends remember her as someone who could light up a room with her laughter. London's relationship with Jalen was one of the few things that seemed to ground her in the chaotic world of high school. But, as bright as she was, London didn't fully understand the danger she was walking into. She didn't know that Jalen's connection to his mother was a bond that couldn't be broken. Charla saw London not as a young woman in love, but as an obstacle, someone who could pull Jalen away from her. London was a dreamer, and in the beginning, Jalen seemed like the answer to her dreams. But what she didn't know was that Jalen's ties to his mother were far stronger than anything she could offer. And soon, London would learn that trust in the wrong person can be deadly. Friends of London recall the moments she shared with Jalen, how they talked about their future, their plans for the summer. But what they didn't see were the cracks beneath the surface. London's hopefulness began to wane as she noticed Jalen's erratic behavior, his inability to stand up to his mother. London had no idea how deeply embedded Charla was in their relationship, and she had no idea just how dangerous that bond could be. London's death was not just the result of one tragic moment. It was the culmination of years of manipulation, deception, and a twisted bond between mother and son. A bond that would end with a life lost and a family forever broken. The day started like any other. London was seen at 4 a.m., being dropped off at Jalen's house. Little did she know, she would never make it out alive. While to the outside world, this might have seemed like just another night, something felt off inside the Pendergrass home. Was it the nervousness in Jalen's eyes, or the way Charla avoided eye contact with London? It's hard to say, but in hindsight, these were the first signs of the tragedy that would soon unfold. Interviews with neighbors recall small but peculiar moments leading up to the night. One neighbor, who lived just a few houses down, remembers seeing Jalen's car parked outside much later than usual, and the faint sound of raised voices coming from the Pendergrass house in the early hours of the morning. Another neighbor recalls Charla walking outside with an unusually hurried look, but when asked, she simply shrugged it off, saying she was just going to run a quick errand. These moments seemed insignificant at the time, but now, in the shadow of what happened, they carry a weight of foreboding. Neighbors recall seeing Jalen's car parked late into the night, and Charla's behavior seemed odd. Small red flags that no one could have known would soon bloom into a full-blown tragedy. For London, there was no indication that anything was amiss. She had no reason to believe that this visit to Jalen's house would be the last time anyone would hear from her. In the days that followed, London's family began to grow increasingly worried. Calls went unanswered. Text messages, ignored. At first, they chalked it up to her usual lack of communication, typical of a teenager. But as hours turned into days, the anxiety started to rise. By April 7th, it was clear something was terribly wrong. The disappearance goes unnoticed at first. But by April 7th, alarm bells begin to ring. Something was terribly wrong. The panic sets in. London's family begins to realize something they hadn't considered before: their daughter had vanished. Completely. And there were no signs. No clues. No answers. Authorities are called in, and the investigation begins. The local police, initially treating it as a possible runaway case, soon shift their approach when it becomes clear that London's disappearance is anything but ordinary. Her last known location, the Pendergrass house, becomes the focal point of the investigation. The timeline begins to tighten. And as days pass, it becomes harder to ignore the disturbing possibility that something far more sinister is at play. As investigators piece together the timeline, the search for London intensifies. Every minute that passes feels like an eternity. Authorities know that time is running out. The next few days blur into a frantic race against time, as investigators comb through the Pendergrass home, looking for any trace of London. But the house remains eerily quiet, offering up no signs of a struggle. Something still doesn't of what happened after she entered. There's something about the Pendergrass family's behavior, Jalen's reluctance to answer questions, Charla's unnerving calmness, that hints at a secret buried deep within their walls. By April 11th, investigators have a breakthrough. A phone call from Charla's friend, a man who helped her move a sealed plastic bin days after London disappeared, marks the first significant lead. The bin, described as sealed with unknown contents, would soon lead authorities down a dark path. As the investigation moves forward, the mounting tension fills the air. What happened to London? Why did she never leave Jalen's house? Was this the result of a horrible accident, or was there something far more deliberate at play? The clues are beginning to add up, and the sense of dread becomes harder to ignore. The truth, hidden behind a series of lies and manipulations, is slowly coming to light. On April 6, Charla Pendergrass reached out to a friend, asking for help moving a plastic bin with unknown contents. A simple request, but a request that would change everything. There was something off about Charla's demeanor. She was too calm, too measured. The tone of her voice, so normal, so detached, only deepened the suspicion. What was in the bin? And why didn't Charla explain more? Charla's request, so simple and yet so cryptic, planted the first seed of suspicion. What was in that bin? Why was she so secretive? It would be days before anyone would understand the gravity of that moment. Fast forward to April 26, the day when everything comes to light. The authorities receive a tip about the bin, and everything changes. When investigators trace the location, they find the SUV that Charla's friend had helped her use. Inside, the sealed bin is recovered, and the chilling truth comes into focus. London's lifeless body is discovered, hidden away in that very container. The manner of death is confirmed as asphyxiation. What had been a seemingly harmless task, a simple favor between friends, was now the key to unlocking a horrific crime. The bin, once an innocent object, now became the key piece of evidence. Charla's casual request to a friend, a simple task, had unknowingly led authorities straight to the truth. And with that discovery, the full extent of the crime began to unfold. As the investigation progresses, the significance of Charla's phone call grows. What began as a simple request for help has now become the thread that unravels the entire case. What did Charla truly know? And how far was she willing to go to protect her son? On April 11, the friend helps Charla move the plastic bin to a different location in Southfield, Michigan. But what was in that bin? And why was Charla so determined to hide it? Charla's request seems harmless on the surface, but the weight of the bin and the secrecy surrounding it raised doubts in the friend's mind.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.
He wonders what's inside, but the tension is palpable. He doesn't ask. Maybe he knows better than to pry. Maybe he's too afraid to know the truth. As they drive to a new location in Southfield, the friend's silence grows heavier. Charla remains calm, too calm, as though she is purposefully steering the conversation away from the bin. The destination feels distant, unfamiliar, yet the friend follows her lead, trusting her without fully understanding why. They reach the house, and Charla directs him to place the bin behind it, out of sight. No questions are asked, no further words are exchanged. The bin, now hidden away, is out of sight. But the lingering question remains, what is Charla trying so desperately to conceal? The answer, though still unknown to the friend, is inching closer to the surface. April 26. The investigation takes a decisive turn. A tip-off leads authorities to an SUV, parked outside a house in Southfield. The bin is recovered, and inside, London Thomas's remains are discovered. The bin, once a mere object of everyday life, now became the chilling container of a young woman's fate. As the lid slowly opens, the cold truth is revealed. London Thomas's body, now lifeless, is discovered, hidden away and discarded as though she were nothing more than garbage. The moment that would change everything. A tip-off, a simple call from a friend, led authorities to this moment, the grim discovery of London Thomas's remains. And with that, the entire investigation shifts, as every piece of evidence, every whisper of suspicion, begins to fall into place. The significance of the bin cannot be overstated. What had seemed like a trivial task, a request for help moving a heavy object, was in fact the moment the investigation took a turn toward the truth. It was the first crack in Charla's carefully constructed wall of lies. The medical examiner confirms what everyone feared. London Thomas's cause of death was asphyxiation. The bin, once thought to be an innocent container, was now a vessel of murder. London's death was not just tragic, it was calculated. The cause of death, asphyxiation, confirmed what investigators had feared: someone, with cold intention, had taken her life. The scene cuts to a quiet moment in the investigator's office as they sit, reviewing the case. The weight of the discovery has left an indelible mark on them. Charla's role in this, her manipulation and lies, begins to feel like an inevitable consequence of her actions. Her son, Jalen, also caught in her web, becomes a pawn in a game far more sinister than anyone imagined. Every piece of evidence points back to Charla. She had lied, manipulated, and concealed the truth, all to protect herself and her son. But now, the web of deception was beginning to fall apart. And the truth was closer than ever. It took nearly a month to piece together the truth. And on the day the Pendergrass family was arrested, the community held its breath. Charla, a mother once admired in the neighborhood, and Jalen, her son, whose reckless behavior had always flown under the radar, were about to see everything they'd built come crumbling down. A dramatic reenactment unfolds. Police rush into the home, their boots heavy on the floor as they move with precision. The camera focuses on the faces of Charla and Jalen as they're suddenly pulled from their daily lives and thrust into the chaos of their arrest. Charla, standing in the living room, looks up with a mixture of surprise and coldness as officers approach. Jalen, sitting on the couch, looks confused, his body tense, but there's no resistance, just a hollow acceptance in his eyes. There's no fight. No attempt to escape. Charla and Jalen, caught in the web of their own lies, can only stand in stunned silence as the police move in. Handcuffs click on their wrists, once a mother and son, now mere suspects in a brutal crime. They're arrested, but not in the way you might expect. No angry outbursts, no grand confessions. Just two people, caught in a moment of their own making, as the weight of their actions finally catches up to them. The prosecution wasted no time. Charla, described as manipulative, deceptive, and untrustworthy, was charged with second-degree murder. Jalen, caught in a storm of legal trouble, was also charged. The prosecution paints Charla as the mastermind behind the murder, a woman who used her son as a pawn in a web of lies. But what truly makes the case heartbreaking is the emotional betrayal. Charla wasn't just a mother. She was someone who twisted love into control, whose manipulation extended to the very person she was supposed to nurture and protect. As the prosecution presents its case, the courtroom fills with tension. The emotional weight of this betrayal is undeniable, Charla and Jalen's actions have shattered not just a family, but an entire community. How did they go from a family living side by side to one entangled in murder and deceit? The judge listens intently as the case unfolds, and the audience can feel the gravity of the situation. The defense's arguments are weak compared to the mountain of evidence that has been presented. The courtroom is full of anxious energy as the true scope of the crime begins to settle in. The Pendergrass family, once seen as ordinary, now stands at the center of a tragedy of their own making. The trial becomes not just a legal battle, but an emotional reckoning. How could a mother, who was supposed to love and protect, betray her own flesh and blood in such a horrific way? And how did a son, caught between love and fear, become an accomplice in such a brutal crime? Charla and Jalen Pendergrass are no longer just a mother and son, they are the accused, standing trial for a crime that has rocked the foundations of everything they once knew. And as the case progresses, more revelations are sure to come to light. But one thing is certain, the fall of this family, once thought to be ordinary, is far from over. As the trial progresses, every day brings new revelations. Charla, once a mother who claimed to protect her son, is now a woman who stands accused of leading him into the depths of deceit and murder. Charla, the woman who once claimed to be a protector, now stands accused of leading her son down a dark path. A mother, who should have been his guide, became his manipulator. What was once a bond built on trust now teeters on the edge of complete destruction. Jalen, caught between his love for his mother and the growing realization that something was terribly wrong, begins to crack. The emotional toll on him is evident. Charla's influence over him is undeniable, but the cracks in their relationship are beginning to show. As the trial continues, the emotional tension between mother and son grows. The camera focuses on Charla's face as she listens to the prosecutor's argument, her features stone cold, but beneath it, there's a flicker of something, fear, guilt, or perhaps regret. Jalen, on the other hand, seems increasingly lost. The weight of his actions is starting to sink in. Every day in court, as more details of London's death come to light, he appears more and more distraught. The realization of what he's been a part of, the extent of the betrayal and murder, takes a psychological toll on him. In moments of silence, he looks to Charla for reassurance, but there's nothing left. Every day in court, Jalen's internal struggle becomes more apparent. The remorse, the regret, it's there in his eyes. But the question remains, was he a victim of Charla's manipulation, or was he complicit in the crime? Charla's defense is simple, she's a mother who did what she thought was right, trying to protect her son from the world. But the court sees it differently. The jury listens, but their skepticism grows with every word she speaks. Can love truly justify murder? Or is this just a mother who took her protectiveness to a deadly extreme? Psychological experts are brought in to testify about Charla's manipulative tendencies. They explain how Charla's behavior fits the profile of someone who is capable of controlling others through emotional manipulation. One criminologist explains how Charla's ability to twist reality and justify her actions is a classic sign of someone who thrives on power and control. Her manipulation wasn't just about keeping Jalen in line, it was about keeping him dependent on her, even if it meant leading him down a path of destruction. Experts weigh in, describing Charla as someone who manipulated not only her son but the very fabric of reality itself. She was a master at turning love into control, and fear into loyalty. But as the trial unfolds, it becomes clear that the damage she's done is irreversible. As the trial reaches its climax, the emotional breakdowns grow more intense. Jalen, overcome with guilt, begins to crack under the pressure. He takes the stand, his voice shaky, his hands trembling. The weight of his involvement in London's death is too much to bear. Charla, meanwhile, sits in silence, her face a mask of defiance, though the cracks are beginning to show. She remains stoic, but in her eyes, there is something else, something that even she cannot hide. The truth, however difficult, is finally coming to the surface. Charla's manipulation, Jalen's regret, it's all laid bare in the courtroom. What started as a family bound by blood has ended in tragedy. And the consequences of their actions will haunt them forever. In the aftermath, the pain is palpable. London's family struggles to make sense of the betrayal, while Charla and Jalen's motivations remain unclear. What could drive a mother to destroy her own child's life? What happens when love turns toxic? London's family is left in disbelief. How could this happen? How could someone who was once a part of their lives, someone they trusted, betray them so completely? The hurt is not just from losing London, it's from the cruelty that came from the ones who were supposed to protect her. Interviews with London's family members reveal the depth of their heartbreak. Her father speaks softly, his voice thick with emotion, as he recounts the last time he saw his daughter. He talks about how full of life she was, always with a smile and a laugh, never one to keep secrets or hide away. She was everything to us, he says, his voice breaking. She didn't deserve this. None of this makes sense. London's family is left to rebuild from the rubble of a life shattered. The betrayal by Charla and Jalen has left scars that cannot be erased. For them, the trial is not just about seeking justice for London, it's about finding closure for a wound that may never fully heal. Charla's motives remain a mystery to many. Was she trying to protect her son? Or was it something more selfish, an overwhelming desire to keep him under her control, even at the cost of another life? And Jalen, lost in a toxic web of loyalty to his mother, now finds himself trapped in a nightmare of regret. As the trial continues, the pain of betrayal lingers in the air. Charla and Jalen's actions have destroyed more than just one life, they have fractured an entire family, one that will never be the same again. And as much as the trial aims to bring justice, it is clear that no verdict will truly undo the damage done. The emotional cost is too high, and the wounds are too deep. The trial may bring justice. But for the families involved, the wounds will never fully heal. In the end, the Pendergrass case isn't just about a tragic murder. It's about the duality of human nature, the ability to love and betray, to protect and destroy. As the court case nears its conclusion, we're left with one question: what drives a mother to betray her own flesh and blood? Charla, once a mother who was meant to protect, is now the woman who stands accused of destroying her own family. Jalen, her son, caught in a web of manipulation, is left to grapple with the consequences of his mother's choices. Their love for one another, so deeply intertwined, became the very force that led to London's death. The tragedy of this case is not just in the loss of one life, but in the destruction of an entire family, a family that had once been built on love, now torn apart by deceit and betrayal. The pain in London's family is tangible. They sit there, watching the trial unfold, knowing that even if justice is served, it will never bring back their daughter. The emotional toll is immeasurable, and the grief is something that will stay with them forever. They are forced to confront the harsh reality that their daughter's life was stolen not just by a stranger, but by those who should have loved her most. The courtroom becomes a symbol of the larger tragedy, the clash between love and betrayal, protection and destruction. The audience is left to reflect on the complexities of human nature. How can someone who gave life to another cause that very life to end? How does a mother, someone who should be the ultimate protector, become the architect of such a brutal betrayal? Charla's actions, driven by a twisted need for control, left scars that will never heal. Jalen, too, must now live with the knowledge that his role in this tragedy was not just a consequence of being manipulated, but a failure to break free from a toxic bond. The trial has brought justice for London, but for Charla and Jalen, the consequences of their actions are just beginning. The trial may be over, but the true answers may never come. After everything we've uncovered, we're left with lingering questions, unresolved emotions, and the haunting memory of a life lost too soon. London Thomas, a young woman with a bright future, had her life taken away by those who were supposed to love and protect her most. And the story of Charla and Jalen Pendergrass is one of manipulation, betrayal, and the tragic consequences of toxic love. This case is about more than just the brutal murder of a young woman, it's about the complexities of human relationships, the damage caused by manipulation, and the devastating toll of betrayal. Charla's actions, driven by a twisted need for control, destroyed the very family she tried to protect. And Jaylen, caught between his loyalty to his mother and his own conscience, faces a lifetime of regret. Charla and Jaylen Pendergrass may have been found guilty in a court of law, but the emotional and psychological damage left in their wake will never truly be healed. London's family, though they may find some comfort in justice, will forever carry the weight of this tragedy. As for Charla and Jaylen, their actions will haunt them for the rest of their lives, a painful reminder of the consequences of betrayal. Sometimes, justice doesn't bring closure. It doesn't bring back what was lost. For London's family, no verdict could ever undo the damage done. But it's a step toward healing, toward rebuilding a life that was shattered far too soon. The tragedy of this case isn't just in the murder, it's in the betrayal, the lies, and the toxic love that led to it. What do you think happened here? Was Charla's betrayal inevitable? Could Jaylen have escaped the influence of his mother, or was he trapped in a cycle of manipulation and fear? We want to hear your thoughts. Leave your comments below, and let's discuss the psychological complexities of this heartbreaking case.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.